Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Jadowitz, and this presentation is titled Critical Thinking is Critical in Digital Literacy. Now, this is a two-video set, so if it tends to abruptly end, you just have to click on the next video link that is below the original video link. So here we go. Today, I will discuss the importance of critical thinking in general and its emphasis in decades past and its quintessence more than ever in digital literacy today as we move forward. It's no secret that we are completely bombarded with information. Most times we turn on any smart device, or including phones, unless you have your phone app settings in check. Knowing how to analyze and process that information is imperative. And for that reason, I say that critical thinking is critical. So, digital literacy should be considered to be part of the path of knowledge. The Wikipedia article sparked a desire for me to discuss the importance of critical thinking. I feel this is important for teachers to impart this on students, and it's our duty to best prepare our students to evaluate information sources in order to make their own conclusions and form their own ideas. And I feel that in the multitude of definitions we've come across of digital media literacy, critical thinking is one of its tenets. Overall, digital literacy shares many defining principles with other fields that use modifiers in front of the word literacy to define ways of being and domain specific knowledge or competence. So, in other words, there are a good deal of expressions that have come out over the years that have been created by putting a word in front of the word literacy, like digital literacy or media literacy, which leads me to my next very important quote. Stay here with me, guys. It's a long quote, but it is a good one. Digital literacy is often discussed in the context of its precursor, media literacy. Media literacy education began in the United Kingdom and United States as a result of war propaganda in the 1930s and the rise of advertising in the 1960s, respectively. Manipulative messaging and the increase in various forms of media further concerned educators. Educators began to promote media literacy in education in order to teach individuals how to judge and access the media messages they were receiving. The ability to critique digital and media content allows individuals to identify biases and evaluate messages independently. Now, I mean this in a nonpartisan way, but if we want to see bias, all we have to do is turn on any news source or peruse our social media feeds. In my experience, there are very few voices or news sources that present at least two sides of a situation without trying to convince you of one over the other. Even those outlets that are there that claim to show a balance of information, you could see a common thread of an agenda the more you read their stuff. Let's be honest with ourselves about that. Are our thoughts our own? Or are we, even as adults, programmed by biased quote unquote information? Joe Rogan, a famous comedian, MMA fighter, and podcaster, once said, "These are supposed to be news outlets." I once heard a quote something to the tune of, "There's a war out there of information." A war of information. And are we being informed and educated, or are our thoughts being exploited for power and perhaps for votes? I'm also sick of the word oppression, especially being that my job is to empower my students, some of whom choose to be immune to any attempts of teacher to student empowerment. But years ago, I heard a random quote one day that stated the best weapon of an oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Look at what we see adults posting, or even adult journalists writing. We're all human beings, and human beings have their own intentions. If it's the case that adults, and especially educators, are extremely biased, then what hope is there for our students? Which leads me to the next quote. Digital literacy doesn't just pertain to reading and writing on a digital device. It also involves knowledge of producing other forces of media, like recording and uploading video. Just another interesting quote because that's what we do as teachers, and that's what people do on many forms of media, especially social media. Now, there's another buzzword, diversity, inclusivity. We love diversity of culture, but do we really care about and welcome diversity of thought? With cancel culture and tech censorship, are we as adults really prepared to or interested in teaching our students thinking for themselves? Diversity of thought is imperative for critical thinking as we teach digital literacy to our students. We have to do our best to, or rather, professor of psychology at the University of Toronto and famous author Jordan B. Peterson says, we have to do our best to teach students how to think, uh, not what to think. In the interest of promoting free speech and freedom of thought, he also once said, it's best to let the unreasonable opposition speak because they manifest themselves as unreasonable. And then everyone can see it. So let's share our thoughts and allow students to think for themselves. So, what does this mean? Here are some possible solutions. A great album by the name of Stereophonics, or a great band by the name of Stereophonics, once had an album titled, You Gotta Go There to Come Back. I've learned that sometimes we have to go somewhere to come back, and with all this technology, sometimes simple and old ideas are fantastic tools to help us as we move forward as educators in this digital age. The good old Venn diagram, allowing us to analyze in numerous slides of a situation. Excuse me, guys, I went to the wrong slide there. The good old Venn diagram, allowing us to analyze numerous sides of a situation. Personally, I think they're kind of awkward to write in and for students to write down the info correctly, but they are a great tool and a great visual. I came across what I call a triple T chart a couple of years ago, one of many good graphic organizers. And I say graphic organizers because they're super important to aid student learning, especially visually. Here's an example that I use in my foreign language class. Now, students can better organize their thoughts in order to marshal an argument or articulate an opinion. This is just a simple comparison between the city of New York and other cities that are in the Caribbean that we were studying. And then in the center, we have Las Dos, which is a combination of the two or similarities between the two. Very good in comparison in general, finding out similarities and differences. And at the very bottom, students are to write in something called checkpoint B, which is just a format about anything that they would like to summarize the similarities and the differences. However, you can use this for anything. You can use this for historical. You can use this for politics. You can use this for the environment. So there's also the read to write. This is where students are presented with at least two sources, and students are able to make decisions based on those sources and support it. It's kind of like a DBQ or document-based question, but now it's our job to provide a variety of quality sources that present a diversity of thought. And it is imperative that we do our best not to convince them of one idea or another, but to allow them to be autonomous in processing information to create their own opinions. Good luck with that. All of this reminds me of the Socratic method. So, we had to go somewhere to come back. I hope you walked away learning something from my presentation, and I wish you all well on your path to lighting the way for others. Cheers.